Hello everyone, John Maher here. This is your weekly Grass10 update on the Dairy Edge. Well, grass growth took off last week and this week, I suppose. It averaged over 70 a day for the previous week, which is where it should be, I suppose, for the month of May, really. But those who are walking every 3 or 4 days are growing on average over 100 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day. While now since I said that over the last few seasons, but it just shows what can be done when heat arrives. Soil temperatures are at the maximum and there's water or moisture in the soil. What this does mean at those level of growth rates is that the paddocks about to be grazed in front of the herd are now growing closer to 200 kilograms per hectare per day, the way grass grows. So keep this in mind when you're making decisions. I suppose we look into the stats then for the week in terms of grass supply. The average farm cover was 716 of kilograms of dry matter per hectare, or 195 kilograms of dry matter per livestock unit. Demand average at 59, but simply put, grass is and will be in surplus as average farm cover and cover per livestock unit are well above the average and above the norm. And growth is now significantly outstripping the demand. So there's going to be surplus grass on farm, and that has to be dealt with. For the record, the diet is about 16 kilograms of grass last week and 3 kilograms of meal, and an average pre-grazing yield beyond 1,500, which is still of concern. Dry matters are averaging around 15-16%, I would say, for most of the country. If it's particularly dry, it might be a small bit higher. Now, looking for the week ahead, then the predicted growth is averaging well into the 70s. Soil temperatures are at their maximum now for growth, so that's no longer limiting. And there is some rainfall predicted for the weekend, I suppose, at about a half inch on average, but below that, I'd say, for the southern and eastern rim, and above a half inch for kind of midwest of Limerick, Clare, and Galway. Anyway, grass is going to continually grow well, and those surpluses recognised and dealt with. Looking at the breakdown in the grass figures, and I suppose about half the farms had an average farm cover above 190 per livestock unit, and grazing 1,600 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, which is, in simple terms, 2 days too late. In current terms, even 1 day too late. But the way grass is growing, but the cover is just too high. And then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, about 20% of farms were less than 150 kilograms of dry matter per livestock unit in grass supply, and grazing 1,300, which is where we are, supposed to be really in terms of grazing, especially given the way the year has come. So keeping the grass right in front of the animals is now going to be the priority. I think it requires a lot more regular walking. Once a week is probably just not good enough for me, really, the way grass is moving. And the swards are now entering the reproductive phase of the year, and growth rates are high. So the challenge will be to keep the right grass in front of the animals, preferably with little or no stem to maximise cow performance. And that's going to be roughly achieved at around 1,300 or 1,400 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, and targeting an average farm cover of about 650, or a cover per livestock unit between 160 and 180, probably closer to 160, I'd imagine, the way things are going at the moment. So to correct the grass surplus on the farm, then, you have to increase demand. I suppose that's the technical term, but really it means replacing other feeds going into the diet. Like eating the wrong grass and feeding 4 or 5 kilos of meal makes no sense at all. That surplus grass needs to be converted into longer short-term silage, or there may be an opportunity for reseeding for some people. But I suppose just keep that, the piece to keep in mind here is that paddocks that suffered from, poor clean out back in the spring will have poorer quality, even though they may be at 1,300 or 1,400, and you may get your chance to take them out and graze the right grass instead. I suppose, given the rate of growth, it's important to keep the fertilizer going out now, because you're going to burn more in a shorter time frame. It's not unusual for me to bump into farms with 15, 16-day rotations, if you think about the growth rates, where we're at. But to follow the rotation with a nitrogen plus sulfur type product, some farms are behind on sulfur application because of the fertilizer they brought in the spring. So just keep that in mind. There are paddocks going to be cut out for silage, and they're going to come back into the grazing rotation. They need the P and K replaced, and sulfur as well. I suppose just to keep that in mind. Every 4 bales to the acre is about 1,000 gallons of slurry, or 1,500 or 2,000 gallons of watery slurry. If you're cutting around 2,000 of a cover, by the time the mower gets with all of that, you're going to have somewhere about 2.5-3 bales to the acre. So you see that where the numbers come in then. Some products now have good clover content in them. They have 20-25% clover content. Nitrogen supply in terms of fertilizer could be cut back here, or you could just go with the watery slurry or the collecting yard, which will keep the sward going in terms of pasture production. A final note, I suppose, just on the reseeds, given the improvement in ground conditions, the heavier late farms now would have had to delay reseeding, but they have an opportunity now with surplus growth, soil temperatures high, to maybe consider some reseeding to target about 10% of the farm, I suppose. And then there are those who have got reseeding done on drier land or earlier farms in April, and you're right up against the point now, especially given the level of growth in which the docks in particular will be about a €2 coin size, and this is a great opportunity to control the weeds and reseeds, and not to forget it and not to delay, because they will develop a root on them. So I suppose on to our feature farmer. I won't spend long on this man, Michael McGuigan, a former winner of the Grassland Farmer of the Year category in the dry stock category. But there are a few things he's doing that are relevant to the dairy farmers. I suppose his target pre-grazing yield is 1,300, right? And his aim is to keep that right in front of the cows at the moment. He's walking the farm every 5 days to keep on top of it. He takes out the surplus, and his argument is that this will be provided with very high quality silage, because the non-replacement stock go to slaughter and they have to be fattened. He's reseeding 3 paddocks at the moment, just to keep the swards, as he says, highly productive and quality grass on the farm. But finally, I suppose I would say to most of you listening that most farms have surplus grass now. Didn't get to clean out as well as they'd like in February, March and April due to weather conditions. And we're now in the stemming season. So I suppose I'm basically asking, don't ask the cows to choose, and let every mouthful be leaf as much as possible. Another indirect measure of the grass quality here is to look at your milk protein content. If you're dropping, in 3 tests, I say, yeah, questions have to be asked. We all get blips in paddocks or clean out or something like that. That's fine. But if you're consistently dropping, so 3 or more tests and you're dropping, then you have to ask yourself, why is this happening? And ask the person who supplies the feed, what are they doing to the herd? So on that note, we will leave it at that. Wish you all the best of luck in getting the silage done. It has been a good week for making silage, and a lot got done. There will be those who will be delayed, but I suppose at the rate of grass growth, I'd say the sooner the better that it gets done. And I suppose just when I mentioned that, I should say as well, like that the second cut area needs to be targeted as well in terms of P's and K's, because you are going to remove about the equivalent of 2,000 gallons in terms of P's and K's on second cut. And I suppose this is to target somewhere between 65 to 70 units of nitrogen between fertilizer and slurry combined. I would say if the slurry's gone out this week in the burning heat, there's very little nitrogen in that. If the rain comes this weekend and you're applying slurry, 2,000 gallons would supply somewhere between 8 and 10 units of nitrogen per acre. And finally, every cut of silage requires about 8 to 10 units of sulfur per acre, and that can go out in the fertilizer form because sulfur is not high in silage. If you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page on the Teagasc public website, and the link to the newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We'd like to thank all those who support the Grass10 campaign: AIB, Grass and Agro, Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update, and I will talk to you all next week.